In 2003, one of the most dominant athletes on the entire planet did not walk into a boxing ring. He walked into a courtroom. This man had earned more than $300 million over the course of his career, multiple mansions across multiple states, a personal fleet of cars that needed their own private garage, a literal menagerie of exotic pets including Bengal tigers, because apparently normal pets were not impressive enough for the kind of wealth he was trying to broadcast to the world. And yet the paperwork sitting on the judge's desk that day said something that should have been mathematically impossible. This man was over $30 million in debt, not a little behind on a credit card, not slightly upside down on a mortgage. Legally and financially bankrupt after earning more money in one career than most towns generate in a decade. I'm going to tell you exactly who this is in a few minutes because his name is not actually the point of this story. The math is the point. If you are watching this video hoping that earning more money is the fix for your financial stress, I need you to sit with that number for a second. $300 million earned, $30 million owed. So here is the question that should genuinely be haunting you right now. Whether you make $35,000 a year or $350,000 a year, if earning more money does not fix your money problems, then what actually does? My name is David Marshall, and this channel exists to answer exactly that kind of question. Not with motivational quotes, not with get-rich-quick promises, but with the actual psychology, the actual math, and the actual behavioral science behind why financially successful-looking people quietly go broke, and why some completely ordinary, unremarkable people end up wealthy without anyone around them ever noticing it happening. If that sounds like the kind of investigation you want to be part of every single week, hit subscribe right now, because today we are opening a full case file on something I call the Paycheck Prison. By the end of this video, you are going to look at your own bank account completely differently, and you are never going to be able to unsee it. Let us start with a number that is honestly more disturbing than that boxer's bankruptcy. According to multiple national surveys conducted over the past few years, 78% of American workers live paycheck to paycheck. 78 out of every 100 people you personally know, your coworkers, your neighbors, the person sitting across from you at church or at your kid's soccer game, possibly you right now watching this. But here is the detail that completely breaks the narrative most people assume is true. This is not simply a low-income problem. 1 out of every 10 people earning over $100,000 a year is also living paycheck to paycheck. A 6-figure salary sitting directly next to zero financial safety net. Which means somewhere between the direct deposit hitting the account in the last week of the month, something is quietly draining these people dry. And based on that income data alone, it clearly has almost nothing to do with how much a person actually earns. So if income is not the villain of this story, and clearly it is not, we need to go all the way back to a much more basic question that almost nobody actually stops to ask. What is money actually? Most people think of money as paper. As numbers on a screen, as a scoreboard you either win or lose, but that is not actually what money is. Money at its core is an expression of value. Every single dollar that ever lands in your account exists because you, or someone connected to you, produce something that another human being valued enough to willingly trade for. A paycheck is an expression of value your employer places on your labor and your time. Revenue is an expression of value customers place on a product or a service. Even a birthday gift from a family member is an expression of value someone places on their relationship with you. Now here is where most people get philosophically confused. You have probably heard the phrase money is the root of all evil, and you have probably also heard the opposite argument, that money solves everything and buys happiness outright. Both of those ideas are wrong, and they are wrong for the same reason. Money itself is neutral. It carries no morality of its own. It is not good. It is not evil. It is simply a mirror, and a mirror does not create the image. It only reflects what is already standing in front of it. Money reflects whatever value is created to earn it, and it reflects whatever decisions get made with it after it arrives. A surgeon and a scammer can both end up with the exact same amount of money in their account, and the dollars themselves do not know or care about the difference. Which means the real, more useful question was never how much money is entering your life. The real question is what happens to that value after it arrives, because that is the part that actually determines whether you end up financially free, or whether you end up exactly like that boxer, standing in front of a bankruptcy judge despite earning an amount of money most people cannot even fully picture in their head. Here is the equation that answers that question, and I want you to actually picture this as a physical scale sitting in your mind, because once you see it this way, you will never be able to unsee it again. On one side of that scale sits production. That is everything you create. Your labor, your specific skills, the solutions you personally provide to other people's problems, the actual value you generate out into the world. On the other side of that scale sits consumption. That is everything you consume. Your car payment, your rent or your mortgage, your vacations, your dinners out, your subscriptions, your status purchases, literally anything that flows out of your life instead of into it. Your real financial position, your actual net worth, is not determined by how much you earn on the production side alone. It is determined entirely by the relationship between these two sides of the scale, production versus consumption. And here's a sentence I want stitched permanently into your memory for the rest of this video. Production means nothing when you have a problem with consumption. Think about that boxer again. He produced over $300 million across his career. That is historic generational level production, the kind most people will never come close to in 10 lifetimes. But his consumption side of that scale was even heavier. Multiple mansions he barely visited. A private collection of tigers that reportedly cost well over $100,000 a year just in upkeep and specialized care. Jewelry, custom cars, and an entourage of people on payroll whether their work was actually needed that week or not. This pattern is not unique to one boxer. Financial researchers have repeatedly documented the exact same collapse among lottery winners, among professional athletes across nearly every sport, and among doctors earning high six-figure salaries who still somehow live paycheck to paycheck. It was never a production problem in any of these cases. It was always every single time a consumption problem because every time production goes up without discipline attached to it, consumption quietly rises to match it, and sometimes it rises even faster than the income itself. And that leads directly into the second phrase I need stitched into your memory. The things you own end up owning you. That mansion needs full-time staff. That car needs premium insurance and premium fuel. That status needs to be constantly maintained in front of people who, statistically speaking, are not even paying nearly as much attention to you as your anxiety convinces you they are. This is exactly where we need to redefine a term you have probably heard 1,000 times but likely never actually understood correctly: the rat race. Most people picture the rat race as simply having a job, waking up early, sitting in traffic, clocking in at a desk. That is not actually it. The real rat race is living on the financial edge, one single missed paycheck away from being completely broke, trapped entirely by the cost of maintaining a lifestyle you built specifically to look successful to other people. Picture two people for a second. Derek earns $38,000 a year, rents a modest apartment, drives a paid-off car that is 9 years old, and has 3 months of expenses sitting untouched in a savings account. Monica earns $210,000 a year, leases a luxury vehicle, rents a house well beyond what she actually needs, and has less than $400 in savings at any given moment. Ask yourself honestly which one of these two people is actually in the rat race. It is Monica, despite earning over 5 times what Derek earns, because the rat race was never about the number printed on your paycheck. It is about the size of the gap between what you produce and what you consume. If that gap is thin, or if it does not exist at all, you are trapped inside the paycheck prison regardless of your income level. And this is exactly what happened to that 78% of American workers we talked about earlier. Their lifestyle quietly expanded to match, or in many cases to exceed, their income, closing the gap completely until there was nothing left over. No breathing room, no buffer, no actual safety net. Just an entire lifestyle sitting directly on top of a financial cliff, one single missed paycheck away from falling straight off of it. So if all of this is so mathematically obvious once you see it laid out like this, why does almost nobody actually escape it? Because the paycheck prison is not built out of math. Math is easy to understand once someone shows it to you clearly. The paycheck prison is built out of psychology, and there are 3 specific, well-documented behavioral patterns quietly keeping millions of otherwise intelligent people locked inside it. The first one is called the Ostrich Effect, named after the old myth of an ostrich burying its head in the sand to avoid a threat instead of confronting it directly. The Ostrich Effect is the very human habit of avoiding negative financial information, because looking directly at it feels significantly worse than simply not knowing at all. Think of Kevin, who has not opened his banking app in almost a month, who lets credit card statements pile up unopened on the kitchen counter, and who feels a small wave of dread every single time that little red notification badge appears, so he simply avoids opening it altogether. Here is the cruel irony baked into this entire behavior. Avoiding the number does not make the number smaller. It only makes the eventual reckoning louder, later, and dramatically more expensive, because interest charges, late fees, and small bad decisions compound quietly in the dark the entire time you are choosing not to look. The ostrich effect feels like protection in the moment, but it is actually the exact opposite. It is a slow, silent surrender of control. The second psychological trap is called hyperbolic discounting, and this one is sneakier because it disguises itself as a reward instead of a risk. Hyperbolic discounting is your brain's built-in bias toward immediate rewards over long-term financial stability, even when the long-term option is objectively, mathematically better for you. Your brain was shaped by tens of thousands of years of survival pressure to prioritize right now over someday, because for almost all of human history, someday was never actually guaranteed. That wiring made perfect sense when the threat was starvation. It makes considerably less sense when the temptation is a same-day delivery notification for something you did not even want 20 minutes ago. Think of Amanda, who knows logically that a $5,000 emergency fund would protect her entire family, yet that goal feels boring, distant, and abstract, while a new phone, a weekend trip, or a slightly nicer car feels immediate, tangible, and emotionally satisfying right now, today, in this exact moment. Hyperbolic discounting is the exact mechanism that convinces a person earning six figures a year to slowly finance a lifestyle they genuinely cannot afford, one small, perfectly reasonable sounding purchase at a time. And then there is the third trap, the one that has grown more powerful in the last 15 years than at any other point in recorded human history: social proof. You have almost certainly heard the phrase keeping up with the Joneses. For most of the 20th century, that phrase meant comparing yourself specifically to the literal family living next door. Same street, same neighborhood, a small, visible, limited pool of people to measure your life against. But social media completely dissolved the walls of that neighborhood. Now you are no longer comparing your life to your actual neighbor. You are comparing it every single day to a curated highlight reel pulled from thousands of people you have never even met in person. I call this pattern the digital Joneses, a comparison trap with no geographic limit and effectively no ceiling at all. You are not just quietly competing with the family down the street anymore. You are subconsciously competing with an influencer's rented sports car, a stranger's fully sponsored vacation, and a filtered, curated version of wealth that, in a shocking number of cases, is not even financially real. Social proof convinces your brain that everyone else around you is doing perfectly fine financially, that everyone else can clearly afford this exact lifestyle, so surely you should be able to as well. But remember that number from earlier in this video. 78% of the very people posting those highlight reels are one single missed paycheck away from the exact same paycheck prison you might currently be sitting in. So here is exactly where we are so far. Money is simply an expression of value, nothing more and nothing less. Your entire financial position is a constant, ongoing battle between production and consumption. The rat race was never really about income, it is about the size of the gap between those two sides of the scale. In three separate psychological forces, the Ostrich Effect, hyperbolic discounting, and social proof, are actively working around the clock to keep that gap closed for as many people as possible. Which raises the obvious next question. If simple awareness alone was enough to fix this video would not need a second half at all. So let us talk about exactly how you get out. Not with vague, generic advice like spend less and save more, but with the specific sequential steps that actually separate the people who escape the paycheck prison from the people who quietly spend their entire lives inside it. Step 1 is uncomfortable, and it is also completely non-negotiable. You have to journal and categorize every single dollar leaving your account for at least 30 consecutive days. Not estimate it in your head, not roughly guess it. Actually write it down, categorize it clearly, and look directly at it, which is the literal opposite of the ostrich effect we just spent several minutes talking about. Most people who do this exercise for the very first time are genuinely shocked by one specific category. Small recurring subscriptions and convenience purchases that each felt completely insignificant on their own, but quietly add up to hundreds of dollars a month once they are all added together and viewed as a single total. You cannot fix a financial gap that you refuse to actually measure. Step 2 is building what is called an emergency fund, a dedicated cash reserve covering somewhere between 3 and 6 months of your real, actual living expenses, sitting in an account you genuinely do not touch for anything except a true emergency. This is not primarily about earning the highest possible interest rate on that specific money. This is about breaking the psychological grip of hyperbolic discounting, because once you have a real, tangible financial buffer sitting between you and disaster, the underlying anxiety that drives so many short-term, emotionally reactive money decisions finally starts to quiet down. An emergency fund is not a luxury item on a wish list. It is the actual floor underneath your entire financial plan, and without that floor in place, every other financial strategy you attempt is essentially being built directly on sand. Categorize every purchase honestly into 3 buckets while you're journaling: needs, which keep you alive and functioning; wants, which genuinely add value to your life; and status purchases, which exist almost entirely to be seen by other people. That third bucket, status purchases, is usually where the largest and most painful leaks are hiding. But here is something I need to be completely honest with you about, because most financial content online stops right here, and stopping right here is exactly why so many people plateau financially for years at a time. You can control your consumption absolutely perfectly. You can journal every single expense, build a full 6-month emergency fund, and cut every unnecessary subscription down to zero, and you will still eventually hit a hard ceiling because frugality by itself has a strict mathematical limit. You cannot cut your way into real, significant wealth. There is a floor to how little a human being can realistically spend, but there is no ceiling at all to how much a human being can produce. This is the part of the entire equation that almost nobody talks about, and it is genuinely the actual escape route out of the paycheck prison. It is called mass-scale production, and here is the core principle behind it. If you can produce value at a large scale, you can earn money at a large scale. Production tied directly to your personal hours, a traditional job trading time for money, has a hard, fixed ceiling because you only get 24 hours in a single day, and you can only physically trade so many of those hours before you run out. But production tied to a scalable solution, something that solves a real problem for 1,000 people almost as easily as it solves that same problem for one single person, has no such ceiling attached to it at all. A piece of software built once and sold repeatedly, an online course recorded once and purchased by thousands, a book written once and read by an unlimited number of people. A media brand, a system, a process that continues generating value whether you are actively working inside it at that exact moment or not. This is the actual mathematical difference between someone earning $200,000 a year who still feels completely trapped and someone who builds a genuinely scalable solution and quietly becomes financially free without anyone around them fully realizing how it happened. It was never really about working harder inside the walls of the paycheck prison. It was always about identifying one real specific problem that exists in the market and then engineering a scalable solution capable of solving that exact problem for as many people as possible. Now I want to be genuinely clear about something here, because there is a growing community online that has built an entire, well-developed philosophy around the consumption side of this exact equation, and it deserves real respect. It is called the FIRE community, an acronym for financial independence, retire early, and its core belief centers on aggressive frugality combined with aggressive saving and disciplined investing, all in order to reach financial independence multiple decades before a traditional retirement age. Frugality is not the villain anywhere in this story. Frugality is simply one half of the equation, the consumption half, and it is a genuinely powerful half when it is applied with real discipline. Plenty of people inside the FIRE community achieve remarkable, verifiable financial independence purely by mastering that consumption half with extraordinary discipline over many years. But frugality paired directly with real production, real mass-scale value creation, is where financial independence stops being a slow, multi-decade grind and starts happening dramatically faster. Because at that point you are no longer just minimizing the losing side of the scale. You are actively maximizing the winning side of that same scale at exactly the same time, which is precisely why the two ideas, disciplined consumption and scalable production, were never actually meant to be separated from each other in the first place. So let us go all the way back to where we started this entire investigation. That boxer whose full identity I promised to reveal was Mike Tyson, over $300 million earned across a legendary career, and $30 million in debt at the exact moment the entire world assumed he had already won at money completely. His production side of the scale was extraordinary, historic even, one of the largest individual earning careers in the history of professional sports. But his consumption side of that same scale was a runaway freight train with no brakes attached to it at all, no journal tracking where the actual money was going, no emergency fund acting as a financial buffer against disaster, and an entire lifestyle built almost entirely on social proof, on being seen and remembered as the richest, the most extravagant, the most larger-than-life figure in absolutely any room he walked into. He did not have a production problem. He had a consumption problem, and as we said earlier, production means nothing when you have a problem with consumption. The things he owned quite literally ended up owning him. But here is the part that actually matters most for you personally. That story was never really about boxing, and it was never really about celebrities specifically. It is a mirror held up directly in front of every single person watching this video right now, because the paycheck prison does not discriminate by income level at all. It discriminates by awareness, by discipline, and by whether you are actively building a scalable form of production or simply expanding your consumption to quietly match whatever amount of money happens to come in each month. The number printed on your paycheck was never the real answer to any of this. The relationship between what you produce and what you consume always was, and it always will be. If this video changed the way you look at your own bank account, even just slightly, that is exactly why this channel exists in the first place. And there is a lot more of this kind of investigation coming. Hit subscribe right now so you genuinely do not miss the next one, because next time we are going deep into exactly how ordinary, unremarkable people are quietly building mass-scale production in their spare time, without quitting their current job, without taking on massive financial risk, and without needing anywhere close to $300 million to actually get started. Drop a comment below and tell me honestly, production side or consumption side, which one of these is currently winning inside your own life right now. I genuinely want to know. I am David Marshall. This has been David Marshall Finance, and I will see you in the very next one.